Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Friday, the 18th of March, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. Your prosperity relies entirely on what kind of people have you elected into official government. Now, I've laid out what I think. I don't think that what we should have is something that's way better. And I laid it out on my show on the Delta Report. If you want to tune in, just type in Delta Report into YouTube and you'll pull up my other channel. Yesterday, I laid out a show on what I think would be better. But if you're going to elect people into office, try to elect people that are not psychopaths, not all out for their own interests, because they're leading us down a garden path to where? Well, if not war, now this would be the better alternative than war, would be the garden path toward poverty. Let me tell you guys just how rich America was back in the early 1970s. I remember I was a kid, and I was in America during the early 1970s, and I remember I used to go to the thrift store with my grandmother, and they had a tray that they used to keep. All the people used to turn in their jewelry, like to the Goodwill, and to the thrift store. And in that jewelry tray, people used to, back in those days, throw out their old jewelry that was made out of gold. And silver was very common, and so was platinum. It'd get old, they'd just throw it out and buy new. Now you can imagine throwing out gold, solid gold. I'm not talking about gold filled, I'm talking about solid gold items. 14 karat, 18 karat rings. They just throw them out. Might get a little crack in it or something, or it might get broken a little bit. Still gold, they'd throw it out. That's how rich America was. That they could afford new jewelry and new gold. And it was an unbelievable place and an unbelievable time, the richness. And I mean, people could afford to eat steak every night. And not the cheap cuts either. And still save money every month. Just one person working in the family. This is the kind of prosperity we had in America back around 1970 to 1975. I'm going to tell you, they've been robbing us blind behind the scenes. The people that we put in charge. And this is the big problem. And you're starting to really see the effects of it. So what's it going to be like maybe three years from now? That's if we don't have a war that destroys everything. If we can somehow get past all that, what's it going to be like 3 years from now? Well, you'll go to the grocery store. Say your wife will go to the grocery store. She'll come home. And you'll say, hon, was you able to get any more of those mealworm burgers? And no, they were all sold out. Everybody was standing in line to get the mealworms. Well, what were you able to get this for me? And she'll say, well, I was able to get you cricket burgers instead. Oh, he says, I don't like the cricket burgers. Oh, they got a bitter taste to them. The mealworms are nice and sweet. Can you get me the mealworms tomorrow? She says, well, yeah, I'll go in early. I'll go in when they first open the store, and I'll stand in line and try to get you some. Okay, dear. Oh, that sounds so good, because I really like those. Those are sweeter and tastier than the crickets. The crickets I don't like the crickets. Anyway, this is the kind of world we're moving into. Well, I tell you right up front. You'll own nothing, you'll have nothing, and you'll be happy. How does that make you happy? To have nothing. But why you're going to have nothing? They're going to strip it all away from you. But they're still going to have you work. Get out there and keep the system running. Oh, yeah, well, this really got started. It really got started in 2020 when COVID came along. And now it's going full tilt. Anyway, Enough ranting. I gotta get into the markets now. Let's open up the charts right here and take a look at what's going on. Uh, the leader of China, Xi, no, it's she. I'm sorry, she tells Biden he regrets the Ukraine crisis, resorted to arms, wants U.S. Relations back on track. So he wants U.S. relations back on track. That's a good sign. But there's other things in here, you know. One of the things that they're talking about here is saying that Blinken said further, it appears that China is moving in the opposite direction by refusing to condemn this aggression, while seeking to portray itself as a neutral arbiter. Okay, so China is taking a stance here on all this. China's basically, it's almost like, you ever seen kids in the schoolyard, you know, and say there's 3 boys in the schoolyard and they're all friends, and all of a sudden a fight breaks out between 2 of the boys. And one boy's left out, he's not in the fight. But he don't want to take sides with either one of his buddies. Like, because then he makes the other buddy an enemy. And so there's where China is right now. They're kind of like, they're trying not to make any enemies, you know? They're trying to be neutral in all of this. And it's very difficult because this is a real all-out, drag-out fight between the other two boys. Anyway, so that's what's going on according to what's going on here. Of course, if China swung over to Russia, that would not be a good thing. Anyway, and started to join them in this effort. Of course, I don't really think that's going to happen. Let's take a look now at the silver price today. Silver price, you know, is $25.08, and it's down 29 cents. So it's barely keeping its head up above $25. Meanwhile, what's happening with the supply? Well, supply side issues are just going to get tighter and tighter, you know, as more and more people start to realize, hey, my dollars aren't safe. Not that they're going to take your dollars away from you. They're not going to do that. It's just that they're going to add a lot more to them. That's what they're going to do. And you know what's coming down the pike very soon is something called UBI, or Universal Basic Income. They're going to have to bring that in to try to solve the poverty issue, because it's starting to get out of control, totally out of control. And you get enough people in the state of poverty, you start to risk social unrest on a massive scale. In order to try to stem that off, they're going to have to bring out something called UBI so they don't have millions of starving people, basically. People that have lost their jobs and stuff due to COVID and everything else, you know, and there's massive amounts of people that are in this state. They're going to have to bring out the UBI. And when they bring out the UBI, they're going to roll out the central bank digital currencies. It's coming. It's going to increase the rate of inflation, because you just can't give all those millions of people millions and millions of dollars every day without it bringing even more inflation in. And then they're going to be making a transition. They'll probably have the two running parallel to each other for a while. The old legacy financial system dollar, you know, which is cash and all that kind of stuff, you know, and your regular dollars you got in the bank, they'll probably have that running parallel to their new central bank digital currency. And the central bank digital currency will be pumping even more money in, but they're going to be the equivalent of each other. Central bank digital currency dollar is probably going to be worth the same as a regular dollar. And it's like they're pumping more liquidity into the system massively. And this is fiscal stimulus too, which is the kind that causes inflation more than any other. But there's no way out. They just can't let millions of people starve to death in America because they got no money. They're going to have to give them money. There's where UBI comes in. And they're going to be giving them more, probably as much, if not more, that you make it work. A lot of people are going to quit their jobs probably. And what are they going to do? There's social problems over here in the Western world that are unimaginable in size and scope and proportion. Now, the war over there, don't know really what's going to happen with that. You know, it could actually end overnight. Some sort of a deal could just come in, pow, and it's over. It could, right? Or it could rage on, or it could expand. War is one of these things where you just don't know. It's very dangerous because it can escalate, it can spin out of control, or it could just end overnight practically. You know, it's a very, very uncertain thing. There's no certainty in war. It's very dangerous too, you know, especially in the nuclear age. But on the other hand, it could just disappear overnight. I mean, we could just wake up one morning and the war's over. They've signed some sort of a pact where they're not going to fight anymore. Simply. And the decision of that is not really with the Western nations so much. It's with Russia and Ukraine itself. That's where the decision would be made. Between Russia and Ukraine, if they did decide to stop the war and call a ceasefire. The Russian and Ukraine decision. And so, well, they're having meetings on that. So it's not an impossibility that that just couldn't happen overnight, an end to it. But still, we're going to be left in this terrible situation over here in the West of our financial system collapsing in a slow collapse, which is actually accelerating. I guess that's where the where all these strange kind of meats are going to come in. You know, they're already gearing us in that direction toward these exotic, plant-based meats and stuff that they're creating to try to feed the masses. I guess they just dump the stuff in a giant mixer and make a slurry and stuff, and they. You know what this all reminds me of, guys? It reminds me of a movie they made years ago called Soylent Green. It's a science fiction movie, you know? And that's what this reminds me of. Soylent Green. That's where we're going right now. In fact, what's happening in the world right now reminds me of some of these science fiction movies from the past, like Logan's Run, Soylent Green, Brave New World, you know, and 1984, and all these different movies. You know, they're all coming together into this one big egg roll that we're having right now. You know, and what it all amounts to is these people that we've put in charge. They've all got together behind the scenes, and they've all arranged all of it for all of you. Because they're called lawmakers. And what that basically means is lawmakers kind of above the law, because what they do is they make the law. That makes them above the law, because when they make the law, they just, if they get into a point where they're going to break a law or whatever, they just change the law to what they want it to be. Because they make the law. A lawmaker. What they call a lawmaker. You know? This is a fault in society that we have. The fact that they can just make laws overnight. Make a law. And then we all have to follow it. You know, it's almost like Simon Says. It's almost the world we're almost in is almost like Simon Says from the Squid Game. That's what we're in right now. You know? Simon Says from the Squid Game, and they are the Simon Says out there, and they when they turn their head, they let you walk a few steps, and then they turn their head back again, and you're in big trouble if you so much as squeak. Anyway, I'm ranting a little bit, but I don't know, a lot of you might not have seen that show called Squid Game. It's a pretty repulsive show. Anyway, let's get on here and let's take a look at at the silver price at 25.07. It's down 30 cents. Let's take a look at gold, because I'm ranting a little bit. We got to get onto these charts and take a look at what's going on. Gold is down $6.40 at 1936. Take a look at cryptos today. 1829 billions. That's how many billions. It's almost 2 trillion. 40,744 for Bitcoin. And as I told you guys, that we're approaching the end of this bear market, this bear that we've been in for a little while now. That saw the price come down nearly in half, from 68,000 down to, it wasn't half. I think it was at 34,000. It's come back up to 40. I think we were just about half. It's cut the Bitcoin price in half. And long before it happened, I told you guys it was coming. And way in advance. I told you it was coming. I called it a buying opportunity. Well, it's coming to a close, the buying opportunity. It's coming to a close. And anywhere in around 40,000 where it is now, or even in the 30,000s, you probably got a pretty good deal. Bitcoin, the people who are going to make out good with this are the people at what's called HODL, which means hold on for dear life. In other words, you don't let go of your Bitcoin, you keep it. And those are the people who are going to really make out good in the long run, because this is a this is a deflationary currency. Bitcoin and the cryptos are deflationary. And what that basically means is all the other currencies on Earth are set up in an inflationary way. They always inflate. And they deflate, they inflate to their own destruction ultimately. Bitcoin's moving in the exact opposite direction. It's deflating. And it'll keep deflating way off into the future. There's always going to be less Bitcoins, not more. And it's always going to be worth more and more and more in comparison to the inflationary currencies. Ultimately, in the end, it absorbs all the value. This invention, cryptocurrencies, is not going to be phased by the central bank digital currencies. In fact, that's only going to make it grow bigger exponentially faster. And ultimately, its goal is to take over the entire world's financial system and become the one asset class that everything's valued in. So, talking about how high a Bitcoin can go, well, it could go so high that just 1% of one Bitcoin, which is 1/100th of a Bitcoin, could be enough to retire on in what it can purchase, because there's such a limited quantity of them, and they're constantly being lost. Little fragments of Bitcoin are constantly being lost. Now, they got a set amount of 21 million, but you got to understand that it's broken down. Each Bitcoin's broken down to 100 million Satoshis. And, you know, people lose it. Like, they might have a Bitcoin on their phone. They transfer that Bitcoin out, okay, off of their phone into some other wallet someplace. And there might be like 30 Satoshis left in the phone, and then their phone breaks. Well, it ain't worth going out and getting your phone fixed and trying to retrieve it for 30 cents worth of Bitcoin or $1 worth of Bitcoin. And it gets lost. And that happens 1,000,000 times a day. Well, maybe not quite that much, but enough where it keeps eating at the initial supply of 21 million. You know? And so they get lost, and that's even more deflationary for the whole thing. Imagine the whole world running on Bitcoin, and as years progress, the amount of Bitcoin out there is slowly getting less instead of more. So instead of a world where our currency is always worth less every year, and that's what we're used to, in other words, 2%, 5% less, 10%, right now it's probably 16% less every year. Instead of that kind of world, we'd be in a world where your savings will be worth more every year. You know? And that's a huge incentive to save. Anyway, enough ranting about Bitcoin. We got to get on here. We got to take a look at the Dow. The Dow today is 34,382. It's down 98 points on the day so far. One of the rare down days for the Dow Jones. Let's take a look now at crude oil. It's at $103. It's up 76 cents, which is almost 1%. It's 3/4 of 1%, 0.74. That's a small day movement up compared to what we've been having. just only up 1%. Move index 91.76. It's down. So the credit markets are stabilizing now, starting to a little bit. Okay, let's take a look now at the bonds and rates. And what we're seeing here with bonds and rates is the long end is moving down a little bit, a few basis points, and the short end is moving up a little bit. And so we're looking at a US 10-year at 2.14, and we're looking at a US 30-year at 2.42. We've got inversions in the yield curve here and there, and the Fed is getting very aggressive right now. They're talking about multiple rate hikes of 25 basis points, like adding them up. Like they got away with the first one, doesn't really affect the markets much. So they're going to do another one, another one, another one, another one. It's kind of like eating those little tiny donuts. You know what I mean? You eat one, it doesn't do nothing. But if you go to eat the whole box, well, that's going to sit in your stomach like a lump of lead, isn't it? Anyway, and that's the way with us, you know. One little rate hike, oh, that's nothing. But then they start doing 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 of them. Next thing you know, they're ramming that thing up there. You know. Anyway, let's take a look now at the dollar index, and we're looking at 98.41, and it's rising today, but rising slowly. It's up a half a percent today, though, 0.44. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. You guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.